Hi and welcome to my channel. I'm Simon and today I'm back with, I know you might not believe it's really true, but it really is. I'm back with a wrap up, my October wrap up. So I know it is belated, but also I've got a whole summer worth of books that I haven't wrapped up yet that I'm planning on possibly doing over the festive season. So keep your eyes peeled out for that. I want to do that in quite a different way though. Well, I say quite a different way. It'll be wrap ups, but there's themes around some of the stuff I read over the summer and for why. It'll make sense when it happens, I promise. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to try and make sure that I do wrap-ups again on the channel because a lot of you have said that you miss them and really enjoy them when I do them. So let's get cracking with this one. Now, it's quite a nice one to get back into because I don't know how long it'll take me because I have talked about quite a lot of these on this channel or on my mum's channel already, so some of them will be a bit of a refresher and the other ones I haven't talked about at all. We're going to start off with ones that I dedicated like a whole video to as I did a reading vlog of them, and they are Elizabeth Strout's Lucy Barton series. I know it has the title the Amgash series, but I don't really like I think that just, I don't know, Amgash just sounds a bit harsh, whereas Lucy Barton, I don't know, sounds more like they kind of feel. And it starts with, my name is Lucy Barton, which is the story of Lucy Barton, which she tells while she's in a hospital bed. Her mum has come to sort of watch over her. Her husband isn't really around, William, and we get to hear about her childhood. We get to hear about what's going on with her marriage a little bit, her relationship with her mother, which is very difficult. And I just found this completely and utterly beguiling, and it really felt, as two of the other books did actually, like you literally were having a conversation with Lucy Barton and she was telling you this over a coffee just as you were sat down catching up. That's the sort of tone, and often I'll say that I've been reading Lucy Barton's books rather than Elizabeth Strout's because that's how real the character of Lucy is. Now, she's not in the next one so much, but people that she mentions from her childhood town are, and she's in one story with her siblings, in Anything is Possible, which is a collection of short stories, like I said, that sort of pivot around Lucy to a degree. You get to know her a little bit better, but actually you get to know more about where she comes from and the people that she knew there that kind of get a bit of a mention in this one. I enjoyed this very much. I had been wanting to read short stories for a while. There's a couple in here that really stand out for me. There's a really creepy, in fact, two of them involve bed and breakfast, and they're both creepy in very different ways. One is really like insidiously creepy, and the other one is kind of delightfully, spitefully creepy, if that makes sense. I don't want to spoil anyone, but yeah, I enjoyed those two particularly. Then we go back to Lucy's narrative for William, which was up for the Booker this year, and that is why I read these books, because I wanted to get to this one and then read Lucy by the Sea afterwards. But yeah, in order to read this, to read the shortlist for the Booker with my mum, I felt like I had to be a completist and read the first two. I know that's not how the judges judged it, but I'm just saying that's what I did. My channel, my rules. And this is giving more insight into Lucy's marriage through what is going on with her ex-husband currently, as Lucy is dealing with the death of her second husband. And again, the writing here is so conversational but also really emotional. I think what I like most about Elizabeth Strout's writing so far is that it seems simplistic, but actually there's so much going on and shimmering around it, and also it can really sort of give you kind of quite a wallop with emotion when you're least expecting it. And I just love how we get to know that bit much more about her, but also about William himself as he finds out there have been secrets in his family. And I shan't say any more than that, but yeah, I really enjoyed this. And after I read the other shortlisted books for the Booker, which we'll come to shortly, I then read Lucy by the Sea, which is the latest. I'm hoping there's going to be more, because honestly, I really love this. This one, I don't know whether it's a culmination of reading the other three or not, but oh, you can't see one, there we go. But this has ended up being one of my favourite books of 2022. I was so invested in what happens with Lucy as the pandemic hits New York where she lives, and her and William go and escape to the sea. And we follow what happens to their daughters, who one of them is in New York and one of them is outside of it, but also their neighbours, their loved ones. Some characters reoccur. I believe some characters from other Elizabeth Strout books. I know you said Lucy Barton again there. They come to the fore too. And yeah, it's made me not only just like love Lucy all the more. I felt there was a bit in here where there's a bit of grit to her that I've been really, really hoping would turn up. But then also at the end, I was kind of like, oh, goodness me. No spoilers. Yeah, I thought this was really, really brilliant. And Olive Kittredge is mentioned in here, as is a character called Bob Burgess, who I adored. And I know that they both have books around them, so I'm going to head to those at some point. But I feel like I found a new favourite author. And I love the idea of the fact that Lucy's books, Elizabeth's books, here I did it again, tend to all intertwine with each other. And that just creating a whole world like that, I just think is brilliant. That kind of goes alongside our world. So we have that there. There's another book that I read that does that, but I haven't read the other books that it does that with, if that makes sense. We'll come to that later. So as I mentioned, the Booker Prize shortlist, me and my mum read that together. I will link the video down below where we put them in order of preference, but I will talk to you about them in my order now. You'll notice that there's one missing, but we'll come to that in a little bit. And obviously, O. William was in here too. So my least favourite was the one that's missing, which is Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. We'll talk about her in a little bit. Then it was Alan, I want to say Alan Walker's Treacle Garner. That's a whole different kettle of fish. Then it was Treacle Walker by Alan Garner. Now, this book I did not dislike. I just didn't really know what the heck was going on, but I laughed the whole way through. Like the joy of the writing in this and the way that Alan Garner plays with words, I just thought was absolutely gorgeous. I just didn't have a blinking clue what was going on. And so, you know, that's kind of what I took from it. So there we have that. I believe if you've read other Alan Garner books, you will know some of the stuff that's going on here. It was basically kind of about a young boy who meets Treacle Walker, and then the boy might be dead, he might be in limbo, we're not quite sure, or at least I wasn't quite sure. And then this kind of naked man comes out of a swamp to talk to him. I mean, we've all been there, but I was quite shocked by it and didn't really know what was going on. There we are, but I did enjoy it, which is odd to say because generally I didn't know what was going on, as I've said. Then we have The Trees by Percival Everett. Now, when I did the video with my mum, I think I was in a bit of a grump with quite a few books that I'd read recently where they were using fat characters to, well, they were using fat as a negative characteristic of, no, they were using fat as a negative characteristic of characters, and that seemed to happen quite a lot in this. That said, I think this book is brilliant in the way that it looks at, well, it's all based around the true case of a young black man who was lynched, and it was all because apparently he looked at a white woman, or she said he looked at her in a certain way. And that is what starts off with this book, where there's one particular family where they've done that to a young black man who got lynched, and then the body of this black man keeps turning up around dead bodies from that family, holding the cut off testicles of that member of the family, and then the corpse keeps disappearing and appearing elsewhere. I thought that was a brilliant device, in part because it adds like a whole extra layer of mystery in a book that you are flicking through the pages to because you want to know what happens and you want to know what's going on. And as these kind of MBI agents, they're called, get involved, and then the police locally, and there's all these different kind of frictions between different people. But it also really highlights the horrendous things that have happened. But what I think Percival Everett does really cleverly is, and it's something that I really love in books, is he uses humour to make the darker parts of the story all the darker. And I thought that was fantastically done. So yeah, I definitely want to read more of his books. This just wasn't, like, the fat thing kind of got on my nerves after a certain amount of time. And also I think as well, like, you can use a different word sometimes, but also it is just, even if there are lots of fat people, I don't know, have a bit of light and shade in that way, like he did with the comedy and the bleakness, I guess. So yeah, that was what bothered me a little bit about that. Then we have a book that surprised me by being my second favourite, and that was Glory by NoViolet Bulawayo. And I'd heard really mixed things from people about this. Some people really loved it, some people really, really didn't. Majority of people really, really didn't. There's a lot of talk about it being based on Animal Farm, but Sarah over at Freshly Reads, I'll link her channel down below, she was saying that actually it's, and rightly pointing out, it's not a retelling of Animal Farm, it's just the hook that I think has been used to sell it, because it's not the same in many ways. But this does look at what has been happening in, I want to get the right place, Zimbabwe, the history of Zimbabwe, where characters from history are being portrayed by animals. Now, interestingly, that is where the book for me didn't work. Not just because well, if you've been following me for any length of time, you'll know I don't like animals talking in books. It just really, really, really bothers me. It didn't bother me so much in this one, but it did break the story for me. So you'd have, for example, one of the most evil donkeys I've ever read about, who I adored loving to hate, you'd have her watching YouTube and then using her hoofs to click on stuff, and just the imagery just broke it for me. It didn't quite work, or if they were going on private jets, or it was a shame, because actually I think the writing, the characters were so good, they didn't need that. And I kind of I would love to have had a chat with NoViolet about why she did that. Maybe I need to, if there's any good interviews, you know, where she talks about that, do link them down below, because I would like to see them, because it just intrigues me. And like, part of me is like, is it just because therefore people would talk about it and comparing it to Animal Farm will get it more readers? What's the deal? I'm fascinated. So yeah, but I did really, really enjoy it way more than I thought. Like, not one of my favourite books of like the year or all time, but I really, really, really enjoyed it. One book that I think will become a firm favourite for me was my number one pick, which also happened to be the winner. How smug was I about that? Pretty much. And I have to say, I've recently interviewed Shehan Karunatilaka, and I'll link that interview down below, because he was an absolute delight to talk to. And I do think there's something quite special about this book, The Seven Moons of Maali Almeida, which is this year's Booker winner. It tells of Maali Almeida, who at the beginning of the book discovers that he's dead. He's not sure what happened, but he ends up in this sort of bureaucratic office that is the afterlife, which from the off I was like, this is quite quirky and fun, and I'm going to enjoy it. And then we follow him as he has to try and get his friends to uncover some photographs that he's taken that are under his bed that will shed massive light on what's going on in Sri Lanka at the time, which is the 1980s or 1990s, I want to say. And yeah, it's one of those books that makes you want to go off and Google and find out more about different periods. Like, well, it made me want to go and find out more about Sri Lanka and its history that I didn't know, at the same time as just going on this kind of magical realist tale of a ghost who's trying to put stuff right where he can when he's aware that he's not necessarily been the best person. And I also enjoyed that about the fact that I didn't always like him. And I loved the fact that it looked at homosexuality in Sri Lanka. It looked at religion in an interesting way. Yeah, and it also looked at how, I think it looked at how we document history and how we should be documenting the wrongs in history, even if that can be quite dangerous. And that's, of course, currently a huge thing in the world right now. So yeah, I think this is brilliant. I loved the magical world. It didn't ever break its spell for me. And yeah, if you've not read it yet, read it, because I think it's a corker. Hence why it was my number one choice. Smug Savage Year. Now, book that was, I should have said that O William was my third favourite. So between between Glory and The Trees. Now, Claire Keegan, I did not love Small Things Like These, and I read Foster, and I think really it's just a me and Claire Keegan's writing thing. I can see why people would love this tale of a young girl who goes and lives with a family during a summer, Foster, hence the title. And it's again very well, it's very short, it's very slight, it's condensed, but actually, funnily enough, like small things like these, the beginning I really liked. I didn't love the execution or how it went from there. And I think that's just, it's not anything personal against Claire Keegan or her writing. Sometimes you don't gel with an author, and that's fine. My mum loved small things like these, so I'm going to give her my copy of this. But I don't have masses to say about it because I don't just want to sit and kick it. But actually, moving things around, speaking of books that I don't mind kicking, I suppose, is Vera by Elizabeth von Arnim, which was the pick for my first ever Patreon book club. For I do now have one once a month. If you want to find out more, my Patreon is always linked down below, and it'd be lovely to have you join the book club, and the support means a huge amount to me. Anyway, Vera by Elizabeth von Arnim has often been compared to Rebecca as almost being like a precursor to Rebecca. I would not compare the two of them. I don't think that's fair on this book, and I think it's kind of well, it's not really fair on Rebecca either. But this is all about a young woman called Lucy Entwistle who meets the odious, I'm going to forget his name now, Wemyss, who after the death of her father, she's grieving, and he sort of worms his way into her life and then ends up marrying her after the mysterious death of his first wife, Vera. And there's a question around, did she throw herself off a staircase, or was it out of a window? Anyway, or was she pushed? And that's kind of the whole way through. And we just follow as this odious man kind of takes over Lucy's life. And it should have been just the sort of thing for me. It's kind of gothic, although I didn't think it was quite gothic enough. I think it was trying to be. I think what's interesting is reading around it, as I did after I'd finished it, this is based on Elizabeth von Arnim's own experience in a coercively controlled marriage. And that is something that for anyone to go through that, I really, really feel for them. But it's odd that I didn't feel anything for Lucy particularly, and I felt like that possibly because it was Elizabeth von Arnim's own story, she kind of didn't want to get quite so close to it, so there's this distance between you and the story the whole way through. That's how I felt about this book. I just never feel like I really connected, and also none of the characters were really three-dimensional. It very much felt like Lucy was this woman who ended up in this horrific situation, but I didn't get any other elements of her character. The same as Wemyss, I keep saying it right, Wemyss. He is just odious, but I think I need a bit of light and shade there as well. I need there to be more than just odiousness. I need it to be a bit more complex than that, maybe. And some people are just odious. They're just odious, odious, odious. But I don't know. Just something didn't work. The only character I loved in here was Lucy's aunt, who I thought was fabulous the whole way through, but actually ended up being a bit of a chocolate fireguard, if we're honest. A little bit useless. So yeah. But we had a fantastic chat about it, and it's a fabulous group of people that I'm really looking forward to talking to more about books over the coming months. We are reading Catriona Ward's, one second caller, excuse me. We're reading The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward as our next choice. On the 7th of December will be the discussion. So there we go. And actually, as this goes live, there will be a vote open in that tier on Patreon for what the book to read over Christmas for January is going to be. It's going to be a chunkster, but which one? So there's that. Yeah, Vera. Didn't love it, but loved the experience of reading it with other people, especially discussing it with other people, and everyone having differing opinions on it as well, which I thought was fab. Then, this is a bit awkward because I enjoyed the next two books, but I don't really remember masses about them. And I did have a bit of a panic the other day because I was thinking, I've started to forget what happens in certain books. And I think it's because I have had, I've really not talked about this or wanted to talk about this too much, but I've had kind of burnout at the end of this summer. I was so poorly after having COVID a second time this summer and then another chest infection. And I just think I was frazzled. And I think my brain has just been like, I don't know, just trying to sort it all out. So some books haven't stood out as much as I would like. However, I want to read more books by both of these authors, and I feel really bad because they're both from small presses. The first is Weird Fucks by Lynne Tillman, which tells of a young woman who kind of drifts through bars and, well, life really, sleeping with men, and that's kind of it. And I feel like I maybe need to reread this. I might have been reading this at not quite the right time. It's when I was trying to read quite a lot of short books, and, well, ended up reading two. When it was, what was that short book initiative? I'm so sorry, I've forgotten it. But anyway, then. And yeah, this, I felt like I needed more depth of characters, a bit more backstory. I love short fiction a lot of the time when it's really concise, condensed, powerful, packs a punch, and also builds a world very vividly with very little. This was more the sort of, for me, short book that it's a bit soft focus on the outside. It's not quite, you don't quite get it all. But I enjoyed it enough that I want to read, I think it's Haunted House is Lynne Tillman's other book that I have bought off the back of this one. So I clearly enjoyed it enough for that, but I just don't really remember masses about it. And sadly, the same happened for Naomi Booth's The Lost Art of Sinking. Now, what I do remember about this was that I really, really loved the first half, and then I felt it unravelled a bit in the second half and just got a bit vague. I wasn't sure where it was going. However, I have all of Naomi Booth's books, and I'm looking forward to heading to her novels, because I think, again, I needed more foundations, and more of the sort of around the edges needed to be less fuzzy and blurry and a bit more vivid. But what I thought was brilliant about this book was how it looked at this woman who, Esther she's called, she's kind of obsessed with fainting, and at school they play this game, the fainting game, where they have to try very discreetly to breathe in a certain way that makes one of them pass out. And sometimes they'll do it in a group, and sometimes it'll just be one, and it just becomes this game. And it's how she becomes obsessed with that and takes it into her adult life. And I thought that was fascinating. I just felt like it lost its way a little bit. And yeah, I can't really remember the ending, which is really odd, because maybe I read it too fast. I don't know. I don't speed read, just in case, or skim read, because I think people sometimes ponder that, and I do not, and I will not have you say such a thing. How very dare you. But maybe I did read this one actually a little bit too quickly. I definitely want to read her other books though. I've got them all, so I shall do at some point. Now, the next two books I had got for an event with the author that I was so excited about, because it was going to be a seance at their house, and it's someone who I have adored for a long time, and that's Yvette Fielding. And these are the first of her Ghost Hunters series, The House in the Woods, and her second, The Ripper of Whitechapel. And I was gutted because I got COVID and I couldn't go and do the event. However, her fabulous team, Anderson Press, Paul, thank you so much, got me to go to Most Haunted Live and behind the scenes, and I got to have a little ghost hunt with Yvette and then film an interview with her, which went live early this week. Please go and check that video out. I'll link it down below. It's one of the highlights of my year, if not possibly my life, because I've loved Most Haunted for years and years and years. And I've always loved ghostly shenanigans and things since I was young. And I think that's also why I absolutely loved these two books. I don't read young adult fiction that much, but I just really, really loved these. They tell the story of Eve, Clovis and Tom, who are friends at school. And in the first book, they're kind of dealing with a ghost that needs to be laid to rest. Sorry, I should hold it up. What's happening here? I never do that. I never just put a book down when I'm talking about it. Sorry, Yvette, if you see this. Very lazy-armed of me. Anyway, it's kind of a friendly ghost that needs to be put to rest and is haunting because it's confused and lost. and I loved this. It was a really good entry into the series, and it had some scares in it, some thrills and chills, and also just this lovely story of friendship with hints at secrets of things to come, which do in the Ripper of Whitechapel, which is so much scarier, though I wasn't quite ready for how scared I'd be. A school seems to be being haunted not only by two young children, but also Jack the Ripper. And the ghost of Jack the Ripper has history with Uncle Rufus, who is part of the ghost hunting gang. There's also Boris, the windy dog, who does thunderous farts. That term just made me laugh every time I read it, thunderous farts, I just think it's funny. And also there's Mr. Pig the parrot who swears. And it's just... the world building is brilliant. There's this whole secret society in a former underground rail station, which all that sort of stuff really appeals. But also I could see references to Most Haunted episodes that I have watched. And my favourite all-time Most Haunted episodes are Pendle Hell, where they go and, meet, I guess you describe it as, the ghosts of the Pendle witches. And Yvette gets sort of taken over, and the rest of the team start getting these sort of strangulation marks on their necks, and they feel like there's rope around the necks. And honestly, it was awful for all that team, but I blinking loved it as a viewer. And the next in the series is set in Pendle, so I'm just so excited for that. So yeah, really, really, really good fun. And I would imagine these would be really great to read with younger readers as well. So these would make great stocking fillers for all ages. So yeah, really, really, really enjoyed those. Penultimately, on a spooky tangent, I guess, a spooky theme, we have Woman Eating by Claire Kohda, and this is all about, I've forgotten her name, what's that, Lydia. This is all about Lydia, who is a vampire, and she has left her mother, who she's lived with for generations, or decades and decades and decades, and is trying to make it out in the world on her own. But she doesn't want to eat human flesh or drink human blood, and they don't eat flesh, do they? They're zombies. Anyway, she doesn't want to drink human blood, and so she's trying to find pig's blood and can't. But it's also a look at her trying to forge out her own life as an artist, and I really enjoyed this. I thought this was a really powerful book on lots of different themes. I thought it was really powerful on race in a lot of ways. I thought it was really powerful in what it's like to be a woman and an artist in modern times, but also it's a fascinating look at food and eating and the culture around eating, actually, particularly with women. Not that obviously women are all vampires, but the way it looks at how obsessive we can become about food, and particularly how that is put onto women way more than men, though I think it is put onto men now as well. I thought that was really, really powerfully done. I'd be really intrigued to see what else Claire Kohda writes next, because I definitely want to read it, and I love this international edition as well. But yeah, I just thought this was great, and yeah, really, 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 really enjoyed it. I feel like I did let myself down though in not reading enough spooky supernatural books around spooky season, but then I also believe it's spooky season until New Year, frankly. And last but not least, a book that I forgot to include in fact, there's another one. Where have I put it? The Big Book of Bears. Oh, I'll include it in my next wrap-up, or include it in the wrap-up from some of the summery, autumny books that I haven't wrapped up. Anyway, I had the pleasure of interviewing this author for an event in Liverpool. I had been meaning to read their books before, but hadn't got around to it, so this was my first, and it certainly won't be my last. This is Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And Carrie Soto, I didn't know where she'd been, but it turns out she is a sort of side chick of a character in Malibu Rising. And as I was saying with Elizabeth Strout's books, the idea that authors are creating worlds where different characters interlink and go in and out and everything. And I know Jack Edwards has done a video about all the different characters and how they interlink. with each other in Taylor Jenkins Reid's words, but I haven't watched that yet because I haven't read the other books and I don't want any spoilers. Yeah, I love that, and I'm really excited to go and find that storyline in that book. But also I believe there's like a character in this that gets mentioned in possibly The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and the Sixth. Anyway, what's this about? So Carrie Soto is a tennis player. She holds the title for the most Grand Slams won, and then there is a new tennis player on the scene who is threatening that and indeed equals that, and so Carrie Soto decides to come back and play and keep her title. And what I loved about this, quite a few things I loved about this book, firstly is the fact that if you'd said to me, Simon, read a book about tennis, you'll love it, I would have gone, absolutely do one, Duck. I'm not even, you just know. To be literally on the edge of my seat as I was reading the Grand Slams in this book really surprised me. And Taylor Jenkins Reid just has this amazing gift of being able to take like snapshots from the games, but also everything else that's going on in the players' minds and all that, and just make it so gripping. I also love the fact that Carrie Soto is a bit of a bitch, and actually Taylor said she wanted to call this book The Bitch Is Back, but her publishers wouldn't let her. And I just think I'm like, I love it when you get characters that are complex and flawed and unlikable, and yet you root for them and you see how they become the way they become. And I just really, really, really enjoyed it. And I flew through it. I nearly said I effing flew through it, because I did. I whizzed through this book like a tennis ball when it's serving an ace, or when it's served as an ace. Let's just move on from that. Anyway, I thought this was really, really, really good fun, and Taylor was a joy to interview. We had a right old natter about Real Housewives, to the point where we almost forgot to go on stage and we were a little bit late. And also just a very, like, so open to chatting about anything and everything. Just that's always great with an author. And she sent me cookies afterwards. I mean, what more could you want? I found a new, I hope, firm friend for life in TJR, yeah, look forward to discussing more Real Housewives with her in the future, but also reading her other books. Very excited. So there we go. That was October, and it was full of quite an eclectic mix of books, which November is proving to be already. I have found a new possible favourite book, or one of my top 3 favourite books of 2022 already this month, and I'm enjoying historical fiction again. And not that I wasn't enjoying it, I just hadn't read it for a while. I'm not proving to be very good at reading non-fiction though. However, I'm not beating myself up about that, because I feel like I'm putting a bit too much pressure on myself to read certain things or to follow certain trends or to do that. And I think, like you saw with the short books, it doesn't always work in favour of the books. I don't always think it's fair on books. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. It's been nearly 33 minutes. I'm going to go, but hopefully I enjoyed that wrap up. They will be back from now, and hopefully I'll catch up on the books from the summer that I haven't wrapped up in a different wrap up of sorts, or a couple of wrap ups of sorts in the weeks to come. I hope you're all doing super duper well. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them, and I will chat to you again very, very soon. Bye!